Hello, friends. Today we have a guest for you. Sarah and I are talking to Stephanie Dodier, who is also the host of the It's Beyond the Food podcast. So when you're finished listening to this one, you can hop over and check out one of her episodes as well. And Stephanie is a reformed dieter, a nutritionist, and a coach. And she helps mentor women in their life post diet culture. She talks about reshaping the mind instead of the body. And in this episode, we're talking about, to use her term, unshakable confidence in life post dieting. And as we will get to, the gateway of working on our bodies and our relationship with our bodies really will open up doors to talking about and thinking about and relating to ourselves in so many other ways. At the end of the conversation, we actually end up talking about our relationship with money and how that is a mirror as well to our relationships with our bodies. So stay tuned for this very nuanced, fun, and empowering conversation with Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
And hi, Stephanie.
I didn't know who you were talking to. I know you did that on purpose.
I'm here with the Stephanies today. We have just recorded a podcast episode with Stephanie Dodier on Beyond the Food podcast. And we've done a little podcast swap because we have known each other in the online sphere for quite a while. And today has been the first day to actually connect. And I, for one, am having a good time. I don't know about the two of you.
100%.
I saw a podcast episode that you did quite recently, not that long ago, Stephanie. When I read the show notes and then listened to it, I thought, yes, this would really resonate with our audience. I'll tell you what happens in the eating disorder space sometimes. People are told it doesn't matter how much weight you lose, you're never going to feel any better about yourself because it's not about the weight. And then some people say, hang on a second, I have been in a smaller body before and I did feel more confident and I did feel better. So you can't tell me that that's not going to make me feel better. So this is what we're going to dive into today. And you have an interesting take on this.
So we'll talk about it. It's a concept called the safety of conformity. And it's to explain this misunderstanding that many people have between what is confidence and what is safety. We have been taught to believe, we've been socialized, we've been repeated over and over again that if we are thinner, smaller, we look a certain way. And I'll even go to the age because I'm in that phase of my life. I'm 49, where I'm getting older, and women often become unconfident because they have wrinkles, they have gray hair. Many things happen to their body, and they're like, well, I felt so much more confident when I was 30 years old because of the way that I look. I felt so much more confident when I was thinner. I met the standard either that I had set for myself or that society had told me. I felt more confident. And to that I say, it makes total sense that you do. But what you're misunderstanding, unfortunately, is the difference between confidence and safety. In today's society, there's a very specific standard around thinness and youth and beauty. And meeting those standards is safety. It prevents you from being judged, being criticized. And the biggest one to me is being rejected. When you meet those standard people, and it's a fact. I've lived in a thin body. I live now in a fat body, and people accept you more readily. People want to be around you when you are the image of the standard. You're beautiful and your body is thin because it's more acceptable, and it helps them feel safe because they are with someone that meets the standard. But that's not confidence. That's just feeling safe in a society that values these particular standards. And it makes your nervous system feel safe when you're not afraid of being rejected, when you're not afraid of being criticized or judged. Confidence for me is irrelevant to anything external. The amount of money you have, the beauty standard, the age that you have, it's the capacity for you to support yourself, to have what I call your back, no matter what happened outside of you. It's this place of self-trust that no matter what happens, you will have your own back and you will be safe being with yourself. So in a nutshell, that's the safety of conformity.
What is your own experience of that been? It's often, I don't know if you're anything like us, a lot of our realizations come from our own experience. So what was that like, that piece of your journey?
That journey started very young for me. So at 12 years old, my mom held my hand and walked me in the church basement. And I had no idea where I was going. I was just going with my mom somewhere and turned out to be Weight Watcher. But I didn't, again, 12 years old, you don't understand, like you're just going to Weight Watcher. And I remember further into the night, I was put on the scale. You know, those old fashioned scale where you step on it with like the weight back and
The one at
forth?
the doctor's office. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm put on the scale, and the Weight Watcher coach looks at me from higher up than me because I'm 12 years old, right? And her finger waving at me saying, "You're too fat. You eat too much. Chew gum."
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Jeez.
In that moment, it synthesized that my body was wrong, that I was wrong for eating too much. And I still remember, like, you know, when you have those vivid image, I felt extremely unsafe. And for me, it created the belief that in order for me to be safe, I needed to meet those standards and eat less and chew gums and drink water. So I eat less. That's where it started. And then it stayed with me my whole life for 25 years. So like 12 at 25 up to like 37, 38 years old, my body was unsafe. And it was repeated everywhere. I mean, like back then it was magazine. It wasn't social media feed, right? I would open magazine. I remember Teen Boppers magazine, right?
Yeah.
It's been there,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It was like reflected that in order for you to be cool, to be like hot, you needed to look a certain way. And I'm 6 foot tall. I have like super wide shoulder. Even though I lost weight, I still was never going to look like that. It's not until I hit my 40s that someone, a coach that I hired, introduced me to something different, that you could actually be safe in the world in any body size that you were by doing other things. And that's
And
where the work on nervous system and thought came in.
I'm as interested in that moment as much
Yeah.
as the moment of the Weight Watchers meeting. I think most of us can relate to that. If not explicit finger wagging, implicit at least, right? Like I think that encapsulates what it feels like to not be safe in one's body and to have other people, if not society at large. I love this concept of confidence as opposed to is different than safety. But what happens to a person to be able, like, where's this moment when somebody puts this idea forth to you and you actually consider it? Because we've probably all read things like that. I mean, conceptually, we've probably all heard of it, but there is a moment where you're like, I'm ready to hear it. I'm ready for this. And I think that that's an important moment to describe, if you wouldn't mind as well.
I had read the books, like you mentioned, like in my early 40s, 41, 42, 43, I read the books. And I read the science because I'm a science person. Like I have degrees in science. So I read the science and like it made all sense, but it wasn't moving into my body. Intellectually, it made sense. There was study supporting it. And I tell that story often. Back then, I was in clinical nutrition practice with clients back to back in an office, like a traditional format. And in that 1 month spent of time, 3 different clients gave me a gift. And that gift was the book of at the time, Linda Bacon, within a span of 1 month.
And just for the audience, that's the Health at Every Size book.
Every size. The first time I threw it out. The second time I left it on my desk for like a week. Then I threw it out. And by the third time, and I was on a spiritual journey at the same time, like everything happens for a reason type of journey. I just came from a conference, and for the third time, that book signed on my desk. I'm like, okay, universe, there's a message here. So, and that appeased that part of science of my brain, that book. And it opened the door to read the other things, but it didn't actually help me until I saw someone embody it. And that coach, her name is Carol Lowenthal. I met her
Oh,
randomly.
I know who she is.
Kara.
Yeah.
She's
You know
awesome.
Carol? Has she been on the podcast?
No,
She hasn't,
no.
but she influenced my journey too. She was a big part of the cognitive piece.
Yeah. So I met her. She was just going out public. She had been coaching for an organization, life coach school, and she was going out and creating her face forward business. And I met her, and she was fat like me. And she was confidence, but not a cocky confidence. She was just calm confidence.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, right? Like the cocky, I'm in your face, I know everything confidence. That's really a deep insecurity. And I knew that because that's how I was. I was cocky confident. She was calm confidence, unreactive. And she was launching a business with her body as the centerpiece. And I was in awe with that. And that's how I moved from intellectual to embodiment by working with someone who was embodying what I believe to be confidence at the time.
Mm.
Did that answer your question, Steph?
So well.
Yes. Yeah. It made me think back to what you were saying right at the beginning, Stephanie, when you said people would want to spend more time with somebody if their body fits a certain ideal. And when you said that, there was something in me that was like, not my experience. Because I grew up in a thin body, and I was thin till my mid-20s when my binge eating developed. And I would say that people wanted to be around me more when I gained weight. Women did. And so there was an interesting, for me, this is how I see it. And again, like this is through my personal bias of my life experience, is that I feel like in many cases, somebody fitting the ideal can feel threatening to somebody else who doesn't fit the ideal but wishes that they did. And it actually triggers their insecurity. And I tend to think at the real connecting level, because I think maybe we're talking the difference between sort of superficiality and then actually connecting. At the real connecting level, we want to, I think, we're more drawn to be around people based on how they make us feel being around them. So I don't know, that was just what popped into my head with that. But there was something that went on with that with you and Cara too.
Yeah. It's interesting that you like this experience of life in general, like as you were speaking, I was going back to high school, like that college, high school period. And for me, it wasn't my reality. And probably I built my bias and my belief from my reality. For me, because I look so different, I was, you can call it bully. I was excluded. I was rejected. So I formed the belief in my head that being different meant rejection, not acceptance to me.
Yeah. And that's so true. I think in that kind of high school, we call it secondary school. It really was like the popular kids. It was really about, how you looked. It was definitely an aesthetic then. And I didn't see it so much in the workplace. What I did find is that throughout my 20s, men wanted to be around me more and women didn't. And then that switched. And I preferred the second, to be honest. It felt a lot safer when it switched around. And actually, women wanted to be around me more. And men weren't as interested.
As you say that, you know what comes up to me, like my corporate career span of 15 years, I was gaining and losing throughout that whole period because I was on consistent diet. But people wanted to be around me. And in my brain, this is the reason why people wanted to be around me, was because I was successful. Corporate culture. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, like it's about performance and success. So people disregarded in my head, my body, because I was extremely successful. I was connected. I was well thought of. So people were fakely hanging out with me, bypassing my body because I was successful. Very interesting, my bias, right? And it's part of why I was successful, to make up for my body.
Yeah. And the confusing thing is that I reckon that there would be people for whom that was true, and then people that for whom it wasn't. But we don't know. So we're trying to work out, like, why is it
We're
now
all
that
working
people want
with
to be
our own
around?
bias. I'm sorry, Sarah.
But I think that's the key, is understanding the concept of bias and how it influences your current reality.
Yeah. Because as I'm listening to you, mine was power. I've always associated confidence with power and status. whether that was, the popular kids in high school but honestly, most of the time in my biased lens, the body ideal has been part of that power. And it is part of that power. And I'm a mom now, and there's a mom culture. And I can put on some of that biased lens and see that there's still a bias toward wealth and often appearance as part of that power hierarchy. And that you can be confident if you've got that. The way you're talking about that makes you feel safe because you feel accepted and everyone else is flocking to you. And then it's easier to be confident. But what I have learned really mirrors what you spoke about, which is this calm confidence, which is just different than power. It's different than having status. It is a regulated self.
Bingo.
And I mean, this has changed the way I conceptualize confidence entirely. And you can feel the difference. And also I'm very drawn to regulated people because they have their own back. They are not fearful of being rejected because they're not threatened by it because they won't reject themselves. And that is the most appealing. I think that's the most powerful thing that has changed the way, that I'm thinking about what it means to be confident. But I think that when you have a lot of power, it can feel like that. You can get tricked into feeling very calm and regulated if you have a lot of safety around you, because of course you can. But it isn't the same. And I think that's the key here, is that it can look the same and it can feel the same, but it's not the same, and that you can have it outside of having the body.
And for me, that was embodied acceptance when I could see, when I could understand that I could have power over my own life. I could be confident, even though I would be fat. Because before this, it didn't even exist in my brain that I could be at peace, confident, and powerful in a fat body. Because it meant rejection, it meant judgment and criticism. But when I unpack it, I'm like, oh, so you mean I could live a life not dieting, not restricting, not binging, and being at peace, and expressing my true self, which for me is being ambitious and go-getter. Like, I could be that without having to restrict. Let me think about this. That's interesting. Oh, that means I could quit dieting for the rest of my life? Holy fuck. Like, sorry, can we swear?
We'll make it work.
Okay. I'm like, holy crap, like bring this on. Let's explore how could this happen.
So it sounds like there's a first step here, which is willing to consider the possibility that you could feel confident, grounded, and safe in your body. And so then when that possibility is planted, that seed is planted, what is it needs to grow?
It needs to understand, for me, it needs to understand how it wasn't there in the first place. So this is where understanding what I call like the feminist angle to our struggle with food and body image, and how the concept of socialization, the concept of like, it's not always been true that thinner was better. Actually, most of human experience has been the other way. And here's how society socialized me and other women to think it was okay. So, you mean that I can undo that? Like, I have the power over my brain to change that concept. And that's how I'm going to create peace. So understanding how it was created, and then understanding a different stuff. You talked about power. We often think that power is power over the external, power over life, the event, other people, but power is truly power over yourself. Not in a mean way, not in an abusive way, in a compassionate way. That's where true power is when you can decide how you're going to live your life and how you're going to think, and able to process your emotion, and developing that power, how to develop that power, that it's possible, how to do it. And that will lead you to that place of what I call true confidence.
You bring up a really important point too about modeling and the power of being able to see that. And thank you for being on the podcast, because, in your social media feed as well, you are that. I saw you in Morocco. I see you doing, you're living your life, and you're in your life. I think as social beings, that when we're seeing other people doing that safely, we do need that. We do need to see, and to your point about seeing Kara first, that helps us into that safety of like, if she can, I can. If she can, I can. And we need more of that. And so thank you for being here for that. I also wanted to ask, did you ever have doubt or moments of weakness or, these, I mean, was it like a one and done? Like you're like, this is the path, I'm on it. Or how did you handle because I'm seeing you nod. So how did you handle that? Because I think that can be a big deterrent along the way.
So I want to say F no, but since we don't swear, I'm going to say hell no. It was accepting. So in order for you to be confident, you need to accept that doubt will be there. It's being able to be with the doubt that makes you confident. So I doubted the whole way through. And I still doubt it sometimes because I'll give you an example. One of my things that I'm struggling with as a public figure is how much do I show my confidence through pictures and videos of me living my life versus being cocky and showing too much, right? I recognize I live in a fat body, so we need more fat women out there living their life. So I'm constantly in doubt. Should I post this? Should I not post this? But what I believe is confidence is being able to be with that doubt and nurture it and not let it stop me. So there was doubt. So I saw Kara embody it, and I was so tired of not getting quote there. Like you have to remember I'm 41, 40. When I met Kara, I was probably 42. That's like 7 years ago. I had been dieting, doing wellness culture shit for like 27 years. And like, I'm like, clearly that doesn't work. I'm willing to try something else. And because I was in the coaching environment, I wasn't alone with the doubt and I was taught how to be with the doubts. So I kept moving forward. So now I'm seeing doubt today and I'm like, okay, I know how to deal with that. That doesn't mean anything goes wrong. It's just my brain feeling unsafe in this socially constructed environment. It's just a reminder. Okay, let's move forward. That answer your question?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Because sometimes I go on tangent.
Yeah. Oh, throw it away. We had no idea what that's like. Can I just say, I just really want to say, because I wish I could swear now, because I want to go, I effing love that point that you made about doubt and being able to be with the doubt as being a marker of confidence, because I also think that shift is the whole moving away from the black and white mindset.
Yes.
So when I was training to be a therapist, I had to be in therapy. That was part of it. So I would resentfully go along to therapy, not feeling like I was getting much out of it because my therapist was steeped in diet culture and not helpful with the food stuff the way I saw it at the time. And there are often many people will be like, they'll be in therapy for a year and there was maybe 2 or 3 things that happened in therapy that was like, boom. And this was so benign that when I say it to anyone else, it's not going to sound like a big deal. But to me at the time, my mind was literally like, what? I can't remember what I was thinking about, but it was around, I can't remember what I was talking about, but it was around the idea of going, well, one day I'm believing this, and then I'm believing this, and I keep swinging, and I don't know what I believe, and I'm here like this, back and forth all the time, which I think you experience a lot as a black and white thinker if you can't settle anywhere. And my therapist simply said to me, I think it's okay to oscillate in what you believe. And I remember my jaw just dropped because I'd never heard that concept, that it could be okay to believe one thing one day and something completely different the next day. And that permission-giving statement, I hadn't thought about this for years till you said that then, Stephanie. It was huge. It opened up actually the possibility of, I don't have to be black and white about everything. I thought my job in this life was to figure stuff out. And actually, maybe it's to realize that I can't figure stuff out.
So I want to mention an incident that happened with Kara. Early on, she had a training program for feminist coach. That was her first round ever. I don't know how long that was, 5 years ago. And I was in that cohort and I was seeing people coming in, and one of them was a weight loss coach. And I just about lost my shit. I texted her, I'm like, what? like, what the hell? You're accepting people that are weight loss coach. And then we get into our coaching sessions. You're like, why is it that it's wrong? Like, why are you making the person wrong? She's here to learn, right? And like, yeah, but blah, blah, blah. She's like, Stephanie, you're black and white. Like, you're thinking it's either one way or the other way. And that you're making your belief being right what brings you safety. Yeah. My brain just cracked open. And she's like, how many other areas of your life you're doing that? I'm like, oh, I can talk about politics. There's one right way of thinking. There's this, there's that. And I'm like, that was a pivotal moment in my own personal development to realize that I was seeking the right way in order to induce this fake safety, because it wasn't safe at all. Because as soon as I met somebody that had a diverging opinion, I became insecure.
Yes. So this so much reminds me just of the diet culture versus anti-diet culture in some ways, right? And the identity of that, and that's becoming a polarized thing as well, and the intolerance there.
Yeah, the ultimate safety for me is being able to be in the gray, right? When you're able to be there and feel safe, exploring both sides, that's the ultimate safety.
Boom.
Boom. That's one for the real.
Pause and let everybody's mind blow.
Yeah.
So here's another way to think about that. So all of those who have been classified or labeled as black and white thinker, think about that as what's a classic cognitive distortion, right? Just like catastrophizing. It's just a way for your brain to regulate, to make you feel safe. It's not the truth that there is a right or wrong. It's just your brain. One of the paths for your brain to create safety is by identifying what's right, what's wrong, and then moving you to the right way. It's just a way of creating safety.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what people would be thinking, like, off the title for people that this resonates with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm imagining people listening to this might be thinking, yeah, but I want the safety of conformity.
Totally.
Like, I want that for myself. I don't want to have to do the way you're talking about it sounds longer. I want this, and I'm distraught or angry or what. I have feelings about the fact that I don't have this. How do you work when there's so much emotion kind of invested in that? How might you think about that?
The first place I want to go is something that I coach or teach. It's called normalization. Normalize that desire. It makes total sense for you to want to feel safe by controlling the size of your body, to want to protect yourself from rejection by fitting the beauty standard. It makes total sense for you to have these thoughts, these feeling of resentment towards even me for bringing that message to you. However, has it worked for you in the past? Like, if you deeply look, what happens every time you gain weight? Every time you don't have a good hair day? Every time a wrinkle appears, right? And that's the phenomenon of losing your confidence when you gain weight. You feel really high, feeling safe and confident when you're 10, but it's bound to happen. Like, you're going to regain the weight that you've lost and perhaps some more. Then what? Every time you anchor that safety to something outside, there's a risk that you will lose it again. So the question, like, it's totally normal you think this way. However, do you want something? Do you want a confidence? Do you want a safety that's permanent? That you'll never have to worry about, that's going to be a part of your life. It's going to be check mark. I can move on to something else. And if you're saying to me, I'm not ready for check, moving on, go back on a diet. Just be aware that in order for you to feel confident and control your body, you're going to have to keep that way of eating for the rest of your life. You're going to have to do whatever you do with exercise for the rest of your life. And as soon as you diverge by an inch, you will lose that confidence because you will regain the weight. Just sit with that and see now what's appealing to you. And it's not right. It's not wrong. It's just what is. And that comes back to the concept of what I call willing to be willing.
I like the fact that you say, it's not right, it's not wrong, it just is. Because I think when people have been listening to this content for a while, you probably hear this as well, Stephanie, of both Stephanies, actually, of, I know I'm not supposed to want to lose weight, and I know I'm not supposed to be thinking about dieting. It's almost like because we're presenting this way and going like, maybe this will make you feel better, that there's somehow almost a moral obligation to choose this path. And then people feel the same pressure as they might have felt even in diet culture, but it's just coming from the other side.
And that's the whole pendulum diet, anti-diet world. I mean, we could do a whole other show about that pendulum swinging. And it's not right, it's not wrong. It's just, it's normal for people like that. When you understand socialization and the construct around it, like how society is built for that, how can you make people wrong for that? It's not their fault.
In what ways would you say, like, I'm curious about you, just in your, you. What does your life look like now? What do you think about? What are you focused on these days? What gives you that sense of safety in the middle? How does this all feel to you today?
So it's a constant evolution for me of unpacking different parts of my life. So I've unpacked the acceptance, and the third element was health, and I unpacked health. And now I'm in the space of exploring other areas of life where I feel unsafe. And the big one was, up to recently, money. For me, money felt really unsafe. So I have to answer your question, my life looked like everywhere where I feel unsafe, I have a high intolerance for that. I'm like, okay, why? Let's go figure out why and how can I create safety, because I like the calm, peaceful version of me. And when I feel anxious, I don't blame the anxiety. I'm like, oh, I wonder why. Why am I anxious right now? And the first place I go for me is like, where have I been taught to be anxious about this? Where have I been taught to be anxious about money? Let's unpack that. And is there another way to think about money? Is there another way to think about business that can allow me to grow my business without being anxious about it? So my life is not in a quote unquote negative intolerance, but a curiosity of where I feel insecure and anxious, how can I create safety? Because I believe in my power to create safety, no matter which area of my life.
So it's not like doing this work fixed everything else. And Sarah and I talk about that all the time. And it's also, I want to point out, probably not realistic to think that you'll hit everything and one day you'll have covered them all. That there will always be a place where we feel unsafe because we're human beings. But that it's almost, oh gosh, this is going to sound not fun, but I think it's interesting. It keeps me going to be finding all these landmines and be like, I've got a framework for dealing with this now. Let me try it out here. Let me start applying all that here. And how can I keep plotting out safety along the way in my life and figuring out how to do that while accepting that more will come and being okay with that. That's what it sounds like.
Can I just say, I'm loving your guys' enthusiasm about this. When I find it pop up somewhere else, I'm like, oh man, another thing. I thought I was fixed by now. You guys are like, great.
I'm like, more content. I'm going to have more content. I'm running out of binge content.
So here's I'll send you guys, both of you, flowers. I look at your contents and you've been like talking about food and binge for years. And I admire this capacity to be able to talk about the same thing in order to help people, right? Because I know you're doing it to serve and help people and you're constantly talking about binge. And I'm like, I get tired. I'm like, okay, like,
I know.
I want to talk about money now. I want to talk about business now. And I cannot bring myself to stick with food and body image. So I admire
think that's
both
great.
of you.
I hear you. I feel like there's in other places I'm exploring other topics because it's inevitable that one thing leads to the next. And I remember when I was recovering, that Caroline Dooner, who wrote, the book that was my Bible through this whole thing, was starting to talk about other things. Now she's talking about so many other things. But she started talking about other things and I felt betrayed. I was like, can you just stay in your zone of genius so that I can learn more from you? But no, like you do sort of like, all right, what's out there now? What's out there now? But it all, to me, it's just this loyalty towards where it started. You know what I mean? And towards like, this is where I learned this stuff that now I'm tweaking and applying in other places. It was a gateway. And I'll always be thankful to that and always be able to speak to it. And I think the harms of it, just for 25 years, we had the similar age ranges for dealing with this. It's like, you never forget it. But yeah, passions also grow, which is part of the point.
Well, when Steph and I close this podcast, we will then be doing another podcast called Life After Diets. And that's when we'll talk about the stuff after this. And then we won't even mention food or body.
What I'm trying to create is the life after diet world where women are like, okay, now I can eat with peace. I'm accepting of my body, but I still don't feel in my power. What else? Like, I'm the what else right now. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going, what else? Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Always aim at self-identified women and under the lens of the social construct in the year 2000. What other part of our life where our power has been stripped from us socially? And how can we claim?
Okay. And where can people find you?
The same website, stephaniedodier.com, www.stephaniedodier.com, and the Going to Beyond the Food show, which is my outlet for me to speak about different things. I want to take you on a journey with me. Can I make the parallel about money?
Yes. Yeah, go
please
for
do.
it.
So I know we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just want all of you, the listener, to understand that you're currently working on safety with food and with the size of your body. But there's also a lot of socially induced anxiety around money. And the way we behave as people who thought thinner is better in the context of money is very unique, in which having less is anxiety inducing. We think when we have the bank account with whatever figure it is for you, we're going to feel safe. It's the same behavior as when my body weighs this, I'm going to feel safe. It's the same pattern, and we apply. There's one thing I teach called how we do one thing is how we do everything.
Oh, yeah.
So
I think we've got a podcast. We've got a podcast episode titled
Called that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
we think that by
57.
controlling food, we're going to be safer. We think by controlling the size of our body, we're going to feel safer. Then we go to money. We're like, I got to control money in order to feel safe. And what if it wasn't? What if the ability to be with whatever is the financial and still feel safe is what creates liberation? Go ahead, Steph.
Well, no, I'm just saying that concept of it in and of itself, of recognizing that that's a pattern, takes me out of it a little bit, right? It, like when you can see yourself doing that. This happened to me yesterday. I forget what was going on. It was a mom kid thing, and I was like in this scarcity and I was like, this is that. This is not about that. Like this is not about that. And then in watching that, I was like, oh, okay. And it almost makes you feel a little bit better because you're like, oh, I don't have to worry. It's not content dependent. This is a larger thing that is like, I'm working on these things that underpin it. And this is just where it's landed right now. And I think that's a helpful thing to understand, even if it doesn't necessarily make the emotion go away. It doesn't make you necessarily stop thinking about it, but it can sort of take you a little out of the eye of the hurricane to be able to watch it happening and be like, this is a larger thing going on.
Yeah.
So I have this urge whenever I think about saving that makes me then want to go and spend more. And it's the same kind of feeling that I used to get with food. I'm not irresponsible with my money, but neither am I a brilliant saver. I save a bit, but but I noticed that happening, and it's interested in your quick thoughts on that before we
Can I coach you? I'm going to ask some concepts. So just like women are taught thinner is better, right? Put your full face on makeup. Socially, women are taught that we are, quote, irresponsible for money. And that's the thought you just gave me. Like, by no means, like you wanted to make it safe for people listening that says, right, I am not irresponsible, but, right, that I am not, you wanted to create safety, right, to not be labeled as what society labels women typically as irresponsible.
Yes.
Can you see that?
Yes.
People socialize as women, we are thought that we are responsible for money, that men are much better than money than we are. And again, it's just like thinner is better. We've got to unpack that and liberate ourselves from that so we can spend money on things that makes us happy, not just saving money. Because when we save money, very often women will do it by avoiding what makes them happy. avoiding spending money on things that are pleasurable for them.
I don't think that's my problem. I don't think I've got a problem with that at all. Because I was brought up to be terrified of debt. Not intentionally.
Ah,
It was what I observed. It wasn't an explicit, you mustn't get into debt. But I saw the horrendous fallout of that. So even getting a mortgage is frightening to me. I don't want a mortgage. Even that. I bought my car. I didn't get a loan for my car. I was like, when I got enough money, I'll buy a car. But there can be a bit of impulsivity around my spending. But it's not compulsive, because with the impulsivity, I recognize it and I manage it a lot better now. So now it's like if I want to buy something, I notice the impulse, I can see it, and I can give myself a bit of space. And if I forget about it in a couple of days, then I didn't really want it. If I don't forget about it, you can be damn sure, Stephanie, I will buy it and I will not feel guilty about it. And that's the rebel in me coming out. And that's the bit that gets provoked when I say to myself,
it's like binge.
no, you should budget. Like put some control and parameters around your spending. And I'm like, now I just want to buy everything.
The should word.
Yeah.
But I just want to model for people, like whatever happened to you, you were modeled that death is terrible and terrible outcomes. Like that's my mom versus the size of her body, right? She never said to me, you have to be thin or be on a diet. She took me to Weight Watchers and she was on a diet, picking at her thighs all the time. And she was really unhappy. So I saw the damaging effect of quote unquote being fat. And I just wanted to avoid it at all costs.
Interesting.
How we do one thing is how we do everything.
Yeah.
We're going to retitle this episode, but I felt more confident in a smaller body and money.
And money.
And money.
With no context, people won't have a clue what that means until the end.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and joining us for these conversations. Just really enjoyed it. And thank you for having us on your podcast as well. And I really hope that our listeners will dive into your content as well, because it is so in alignment with, everything that me and Steph stand for as well. So thank you for being out there, fighting the good fight with us.
Yeah, and we can have many more conversations because we are aligned. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.